Lauren Hollows for NOI Education Services, and we are here for video number 3, talking about standard 1.1. And I'm lucky enough to continue to be here with Maree from Compliance Assist and Coleen from Raspberry Training. So we have talked all about multiple parts of the standards. Guys, the videos will be linked here, and here. Make sure you have like and subscribe so you can follow the whole series. But we are going to be getting into standard 1.1e, which is all about where the training product requires work integrated learning, work placements, or other community-based learning. Necessary skills and knowledge are able to be obtained in that environment. So Coleen, I did cut you off in the last video, so
that's okay.
I will let you kick off on what are your thoughts.
I'm glad we're going to talk about this. And as I said briefly during the break, I agree with you that I think that, particularly CRICOS and job seeker type programs and possibly even school-based programs as well, maybe are the focus here. Although I also think that, work-based trainees, this can be a problem. So we can't, first of all, I have seen many times with RTOs advertising or out there where somebody comes in to do a course, they've got to find their own work placement. And really that work placement is all about assessment anyway. It's not including any learning stuff. But even if it does include some learning stuff, it's not directed. Like, you're just throwing these students out to the employer, and the employer is supposed to know what to do. And they're working through this unit of competency, but on the job they're doing a different task altogether. So they're not even practicing those things. So I do think that for a lot of, I've seen many times where those are the things. Students are just thrown out into these work placements, and there's no real guidance provided to the employer to provide any training. And like I say, a lot of the time it's even just assessment focused anyway. So we need to, there needs to be a lot more work into setting that up at the beginning and instructing organising with the employer and confirming they're willing to provide training, but structuring what they will train. And I think that's not just for job seekers and CRICOS and school-based, but for an apprentice. Like, we're going to be working on this WHS unit during these weeks, and over this period they need to be given opportunities to practice doing this, and this, and that has to be documented, and the employer has to be directed. There has to be some direction given to the employer. So that was what I was going to say, that, and there's design in that too, in putting all those things together. So
yeah. And I think that's interesting because, like, when you look across all the different models, because the one I always go back to for this one is, even with traineeships and apprenticeships, when we go about actually assessing them, it's interesting the amount of times that, like, I'll design an assessment tool, and when I go and talk to, I'll talk to the client and I'll talk to the client's clients, and I'll be like, okay, anytime it comes to doing things like, with HR or with finance, I'll always kind of go, okay, let's just be realistic though. Is the business actually going to give them access to financial data? Are they going to give them access to a P&L? Are they going to give them access or an opportunity to write a contract, to action a contract, to do this level of performance management in this particular role? And the client will go, oh, well, no. And I'm like, well, okay, so we're not actually designing assessments for in the workplace. We might do for these 7 units of the qualification, but for these 5 units of qualification, we actually have to design all the supporting documentation to run it through simulation, because we know that the employer, one, may not even have a proper process policy around that. We did tools last year for this massive company. They had like 7 or 8 companies under their umbrella. They were a retail provider that literally had thousands of staff, thousands of locations. And we were like, cool, we need to get a copy of your WHS policy, your recruitment policy, your this, your that. They were like, we don't have those. I'm like, what are you talking? You are a multi-million-dollar company. You would take on hundreds of millions of dollars a year. You have thousands of staff. What do you mean you don't have a WHS policy? And they're like, oh, we've never gotten around to it. I'm like, far out. Okay. So we had to like design all of that as well. That thought process of like, oh no, it's in the workplace, it'll be fine.
And, Joe's motor mechanic, mum and dad business who employs a receptionist trainee to do a certificate 3 in business, and they have to do the diversity core unit, and that requires diversity policies. And Joe's looking at you going, what do you mean? Of course, have you thought that out beforehand? And, are you going to be able to, these are the things, you're right. Too many RTOs just assume, just send them out. We'll just send them out in the workplace. It's all that matters, as long as they do their 2 weeks or their whatever. But you don't even know what they're going to be doing on the job as a trainee, what they're going to be doing. A lot of the time the courses haven't even been designed around that traineeship job. So the units of competency the person are doing aren't even relevant to the job, because this is our Cert 3 program. All of those things I think come into place here too, like having those conversations. What has Joe got, or what has Westpac got, or what has, what are those things there, and how are we going to build, make sure that the student has access to all of that. And I don't think a lot of thought goes into that for many RTOs. Maybe you disagree, but.
What do you think, Maree?
I can't disagree at all. Gosh, if we were supposed to be having a debate, no, we were going to be on the other side of it. No. And I can't wait till the day that my performance review gets, conducted by the learner in the workplace doing, a work placement assessment. But anyway, because that's the unrealistic expectations that, we kind of put on some of this. But sticking directly to training, because, 1.1 is about training as opposed to assessment. So, bringing it back to training, I do think that the workplace, and good design, again, we keep coming back to designing, what do I need to train this person in? What do I need to actually, what would be the best way to train them? What would be, how do I structure it? How do I pace it? What sort of, activities do I need to do? So we've just gone A to D. And then we go to E, and it goes, well, is there a benefit in spending some time? And I think from a training perspective, that is often more focused around observation, and probably going back to things like the facilitation techniques or the activities and resources. I think that there is potentially, again, let's get creative in the design that says, some of these people may not have been in a workplace in that industry before. Yeah. So, is part of our design, the value in it might be that, spend a week in a workplace, not necessarily that they're going to be hands-on for an individual unit, but with maybe a little list of activities that they're watching, observing, does this organization have policies and procedures on such and such, find out, ask questions in, so I think the value in, I think there is value in integrated workplace learning. And I think taking away the emphasis on the workplace being the training. So, and distinguishing, because, are we expecting the workplace to train? If we are using that workplace, though, as a learning opportunity to see, to observe, to, I think that there could be value in that. And so making it a little easier maybe to make the emphasis on the learner and what they have to do in the workplace, rather than what we're expecting a workplace to do as part of the training. I do think there is value, but again, we come back to, why are we using the workplace, and how does that fit into our design? Do we want the workplace to be, as in some cases it needs to be, a place for a student to practice certain things? We come back to, C. Do they have to have somewhere where they're able to practice serving customers, or interacting with other staff members, or, delivering, toolbox talks or something, you know what I mean? But it's practice as opposed to putting an emphasis on the workplace to be the training.
And I agree, and I'm just going back to that comment. I think, all right, so the employer might not be doing the training, and I'm mixing up that whole learning process there. But we still need to be clear that the employer will provide the opportunity for practice.
Absolutely.
So that
Absolutely.
needs to be,
yes.
And I think, I've built these things before where it's all in there. Like, these are the things, and the employer understands these are the things they'll have to practice during this period,
Mm-hmm.
and the employer signs it off and all of that sort of stuff. So that's your documentary evidence. And I think you're going to have that kind of documentary evidence to support this with your work-based, whether that's instruction, the instruction may well be in the classroom at TAFE,
Mm-hmm.
or, one-on-one on the job. But the practice, how are you going to evidence the practice unless you can't just go, they were at work for 8 hours, 5 days a week, because I've been in that audit, and the auditor will just say, well, how do you know what they did?
So what? Yeah.
So that's where you will go, well, how did you direct the employer?
Yeah.
Do you think that there's a risk in this situation as well? Because, for example, certain units require so many hours of the assessment to be evidenced in the workplace. So, the 34 complete food service periods, the 120 hours, because this standard is related to, and because we've got those things like the instruction, the practice, the work integrated training and learning, do you think there is potential to see the regulator turning around and saying, well, if you've got to do 120 hours of assessment, we need to see at least 60 hours of practice happening before that? If they've got to do 34 complete food service periods of assessment, do they need to do, 10 or 18 complete food service periods as practice before that? What I'd be interested to know whether or not you think that those sorts of interpretations are likely to potentially occur, and how would RTOs adapt to that, particularly in places where, like in the job seeker and the schools market, it's hard enough to find work placements for what we have to do now.
It is.
I'm not sure that they would be able to necessarily, some units of competency have a specified amount of time for assessment. I'm not sure that I know of any units of competency that have any specified time for training in a workplace. I may be wrong because I don't know every single unit of competency.
I don't there are. Do we think that could have it? Is it going to be? It would be an interesting argument to see whether or not something like that may come into play.
For me, I'd be arguing that says back to A, B, C, and D. My training is consistent with the training package. The mode of delivery, and that's probably the main one that sort of links to E, the mode of delivery enables the learners to actually attain the skills and knowledge that's in that training package. So how do they do that becomes part of obviously the design and how it's structured. Now, obviously the how it's structured in good design might be in clusters of, and I know RTOs hate to do this because particularly those who are on funding contracts go, no, we have to do unit by unit by unit because, we want the cash flow and that's how the funding works. Instead of, we do, instead of saying, right, well, let's do the general work units first, and then we'll do these, these particular technical units, and then we'll do these, and they don't even have to be really clustered within units, but they might be clustered within, clustered within topics, subjects, or, whatever. And therefore you might have an opportunity to, in your structure then, to have right, you're out in the workplace. And so for these 6 units, here are some of the things, and it comes back to our design and our tools, our training tools, which are just as important as assessment tools. That might be, a training log. So on this particular week, no, we're not doing anything at all to do with, cooking buffets. But in 3 weeks' time, we've actually got a couple of buffets coming up. So let's make sure that when that happens, we can record the activities that you need to be. I think that comes down to understanding the requirements of the training package, understanding the mode of delivery, and then how that can actually, and then understanding how you're going to structure that to make sure. I don't know. It does sound simple, but complex.
Agreed. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much. I guess just final thoughts on Standard 1.1 and where RTOs should be going from here.
I think it's time to stop and look at the design of your programs, and are your programs, how do they fit against this? Are you going to be able to say this is where they do instruction? Honestly, I see too many cases where there isn't even practice in the training. The only practice is in assessment. That's far too common. The feedback from the practice, so that's all your formative learning. And I don't just want to see 10-question quizzes as a formative task. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about practicing, making the cake in the classroom kitchen and practicing making that cake. And you might do it 2 or 3 times and get some feedback from the hospitality trainer till you can do that cake really well, and now we'll assess you. That's what we're talking about with formative tasks. So I think RTOs need to really look at this, because I do think ASCL will be auditing it. And I think they're going to, I'm not sure how they're going to audit things like engagement or motivation, or some of these things, even support learners to progress. That's going to be an interesting one to sort of, can think of some ways to measure it, but they're going to be coming in and looking at it. So I think RTOs need to sit down and have a good look at 1.1, because I think it's going to be, of all the standards, probably there's quite a few, if we go into it, other changes in the standards, but that's one of the big ones in my mind.
Yeah, for sure. Maree, last words to you.
I think for me, there is nothing in this standard that, or in this clause of the standards, or whatever it is, that is not good practice from, and so I would not in any way, shape or form see that there's anything here that isn't good practice that we should be doing, that we should have been doing. It's really just prescribing it, except for, of course, that engaging and motivating. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have been engaging and motivating. We should have been. But for me, I don't see there's anything here that isn't good training practice. And therefore, but I do think I think that the RTOs are going to need to sit down and really look at how they do training. And I think that there are a lot of cases, this is good practice, this is, whatever, but that's not what some realities are. I'm not saying all realities, but some realities.
No, not at all. Neither am I. I think we all know it. We know that there's a lot of that out there where people are just running short, quick courses where they're people a handbook or an online thing, and they do a quiz and it's done. I think they'll be coming after that. And as you said, Lauren, before it's been so much about assessment and then some numbers around amount of training, where we just come up with the numbers. We just make the numbers work. We'll throw all sorts of stuff in here and say we do it. No, I think this is a change in direction.
And I think the change of direction for a lot of RTOs is going to be around that. I instruct, I train.
I assess.
how does the student practice and how does the RTO make that happen for them?
Yes.
That's the gap for a lot of RTOs, is that practice, that volume of learning, application of the training.
And I think D&E fit in with that to a large degree.
Yeah.
You know.
So for everyone watching, if you do need some help with designing that training, with creating some beautiful training and assessment tools, you can reach out to Coleen, you can reach out to Maree. They will be able to help you navigate this process, or just do a check-in with your RTO. All of their details can be found below, links to their socials. Maree and Coleen, thank you so much for participating in this. It's been awesome. I think that the audience has gotten a lot out of it. Guys, we are going to be continuing on with this series. In fact, our next series is going to be focused in on assessment with the lovely Maree returning and Angela from Vivacity. Make sure you follow and subscribe. Thank you so much, very much for your time, guys. My name is Lauren Hollows from Anawaya Education Services.